Hey, in today's video, we're going to discuss how to complete Form 2553 so that you can change the tax classification of your single member LLC from sole proprietorship to S corporation. Okay, now we're about to walk through the process of completing Form 2553. Initially, when you actually pull the form up, it's going to display the actual details with regards to where to mail the form and where to fax it if you choose to. We'll come back to this part. Right now, what we're going to do is actually walk through the process of completing Form 2553. So I'm going to scroll down to the first page here. And notice in part one is asking for the details of your company's name, address, tax ID, date of incorporation, and your state of incorporation. So for the demo purposes here, we're using a fictitious company. However, this is where you would put your company's information. So starting on the first line is asking for the company's name. This is where you would put your company's name. So we have Davis Consulting Services here. Go over to section A is asking for the tax ID number. This is where you would put your tax ID number for your company. Here you would put your address and the city, state, and zip. So since I reside in the city of Atlanta, I'm just inputting Atlanta, Georgia here. Date of incorporation. So this is the date for which your actual company was incorporated. So say for example, my LLC was incorporated on yesterday. So what I would do is put February the 11th, 2022. And state of incorporation would be Georgia since I reside in Georgia. So you would input Georgia here. Now, if you go down to actual section D, it says check the applicable boxes. If the corporation is an entity, after applying for the EIN shown in A above, change its name or address. If that's not applicable, you don't check that. Initially, when you're completing this application, this will more than likely not be applicable if you're not changing a name or address here. So if you're not changing your name or address, you just leave this blank. Scrolling down to section E, it says the election year is to be effective for tax year beginning the month, date, and year. See instructions. So for our company, we would put 1/1/2022 because that's the year we want this Form 2553 to be effective. So we're going to put 1/1/2022 here. So say, for example, if you're just completing your form, the date that you incorporate that tax year, that's the year you would want to make your company effective. So let's say, for example, if you're completing your 2553 in March, right? After your company got incorporated in March. If you want it to be effective in 2022, you would just come back and put 1/1/2022 here. All right, going down to section F, select the tax year. So most firms use a calendar year. So the calendar year is what we chose for our company. However, you would talk with your CPA to actually find out what your best accounting method for your firm is. So if your firm, chooses to use the calendar year method, you would just select calendar year here. All right, you go down to section G. It says if more than 100 shareholders are listed for item J, you would check this box. However, if you're a single member LLC, you would just leave this blank. Coming down to section H is asking for the name and title of the officer or legal representative with whom the IRS may call for more information. So again, this would be whoever the responsible party is for this actual form. They have more information, but if you're completing the form, you would just put your name here. And for this illustration purposes, we were using Gary Davis, and his title is manager. And you would just put your contact phone number here. So you scroll down where it's asking you to sign. You would input your signature here, and you would put your title and put today's date. So say, for example, we're completing this form on February the 12th, 2022. We will just input February the 12th, 2022 here for the date. All right, going down to page 2, notice it's asking for the name. This would be the name of your company. So you would just input the name of your company here and put your tax ID number here in the employer identification number section. All right, going down to section J is asking for the name and address of each shareholder or former shareholder required to consent to the election. So again, this would be your name and your address information here. It's asking for your signature here. And it's asking for today. So you put the date for which you completed this application. So we're using today's date, February the 12th, 2022. And it's asking for the number of shares or percentage of ownership. You know, if you own 100% of the company, you just put 100%. Date acquired. Again, this is the date for our company. We put the date for which the actual LLC was incorporated. So February 11th, 2022. For us, you would put your the date for which your LLC was incorporated here. Social Security number or employer identification number in section M. So you would just input your social here. And the shareholder's tax years ends month and day. So if your accounting period is ending at the end of the year, you would just put December the 31st here. Now scrolling on down to the third page is asking for your company's name again. You just put your company's name here, your tax ID number here. Now, in this section is talking about the corporations. Again, we're actually, for this illustration, we're discussing converting the tax classification from your sole proprietorship taxation to S corporation taxation for your LLC. So right now, your LLC is set up for tax classification purposes as a sole proprietorship. And what you're asking the IRS to do is change that from sole proprietorship to S corporation. So this part 2 here, this will not be applicable to you. So you would just leave this whole entire section blank, right? So you go down to actual page 4, and you would just input your company's name again. You know, for illustration purpose, we have Davis Consulting Services LLC. You would input it here, put the tax ID number here. And part 3 asks about qualified subchapter S trust QSST election under, you know, section 136(1)(d)(2). Again, this is not applicable if you're actually changing the tax classification of your LLC from sole proprietorship to SCorp. So this section will not be applicable to you for section 3, nor section 4, right? So we're going to scroll back up. Now that you've completed this form, you have 2 options. You can either mail your form in, or you can fax it in. So if you reside in one of these states listed in the first box here, what you would do is mail the form to this address here, or you can fax it in. Same thing applies in the second section. If you live in any one of these states here, what you would do is mail the form into this address, or you can fax it in. My preference would be, you know, you can fax it in. You know, it doesn't really make a difference. I know that we fax our form in. The IRS received it. We got a notification letter back that our tax classification was changed. Now, note that it can take a couple of weeks for this to be processed, but you will be notified of a decision once you fax that form in. And after the couple of weeks have passed, it will notify you if you got approved for the S corporation tax classification election. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, like this video, subscribe so that you'll be notified of every one of our videos that are released on Fridays.